AskReddit by Christian98. Serious, should elderly people be forced to take tests regarding their motor vehicle operating abilities and mental fitness and get their motor vehicle license S revoked if they fail the test? S. Why not? My grandpa was in his late 80s or early 90s when he caused a minor fender bender on the way to a doctor's appointment. A couple of days later, he was having brain surgery to fix a bleed that resulted from the accident. After he recovered, he was required to retake the driving test. His doctor sent in documentation saying he was medically unfit to drive. My dad sent in some documents saying he lived in town and would make sure my grandpa had transportation as needed. He was absolutely dangerous on the road and in the early stages of dementia. The state of Florida gave him back his license. My legally blind biological mother was able to keep her license until she died by renewing through the mail. She wasn't old, just sick. Illinois does this. Info from Google. Specifically, Illinois requires drivers age 75 and older to renew their licenses in person, requires both a vision test and road test for drivers ages 75 and older. Renewing in person requires drivers ages 81 through 86 to renew their license every 2 years, and those 87 and older to renew annually. When I took my 17-year-old daughter for the road test, she was waiting with an older man who was taking his first road test since he was a teen. They were both equally nervous. We live in Illinois. My grandma has to retest every year now since she is 90. She is a horrible driver, but yet she passes every time. They are not strict where we live and we keep trying to get her to stop driving since she has been in 4X since 2015. Yes. My grandma was still able to drive even though she could barely push the brake pedal all the way down. My grandpa had seizures and eventually had his license taken away because he wouldn't take his meds and had a seizure while driving more than once. My husband's grandpa drove into a ditch because he couldn't multitask, adjusting the heat vents, while driving. Where are you that he was still allowed to drive with seizure activity, even controlled? Here in CA, anyone with epilepsy is given near automatic probation at the onset of the condition. Absolutely. I'm an auto adjuster and I once had his couple around 70 cause a terrible rear end accident while merging on the freeway. The old man was driving and got confused somehow and hit someone going full speed. The old lady had a chihuahua on her lap and the airbag hit it. They took it to a vet but it died the next day. I had to pay for its euthanasia bill. Other pro had minor injuries. The man sounded so broken on the phone. They never got another car and their little companion died. Their daughter called me to see if there was anything in the police report that explained why it happened, and of course there wasn't. My parents are the same age and ride around with little dogs. My mom says that sometimes my dad looks like he forgets that he's driving and takes his hands off the wheel and she has to yell at him to stop. I'm literally going to report him to their Secretary of State. Fuck, soon do it now before they kill someone. Yes. I'm a young, healthy 27-year-old who uses a wheelchair and drives an adapted van. Because of this I must be tested every few years. I have never had an accident, I have 0 demerit points, and have never even been pulled over. However, old people that mix up the gas and brake pedals and can't remember to put on their lights at night get a free pass to drive until they kill someone. You can thank groups like AARP for bribing politicians to keep them on the road. Plus they vote more, which gives them more power. My grandfather, early 80s, got into a car accident a few years ago. He backed into someone. And my grandmother, whose Alzheimer's has been growing steadily worse for several years, still is allowed to drive. Possibly not now that they live in a home, but before they did, I distinctly remember her driving us to the grocery store and her forgetting where we were going, the turnoff back to her house, and so on. I do believe they, and other older folks, should have to take another driver's test. Like others are saying, I agree people in general should be retested every few years. Maybe not terribly often, but I wouldn't mind retaking it every 10 years or so, maybe even more frequent with age, if that would help there to be fewer accidents. I don't necessarily disagree with making everyone retest every few years, but doubt it will make that much of a difference for most people between 20 and 60. Having to spend a few minutes every few years with an instructor is just the equivalent of driving with a cop behind you. You'll remember every rule of the road because someone's watching, but as soon as they're gone, you revert right back to your normal habits. Sadly, I'm having this issue with my father. He thinks I'm evil because both myself and mother think it's safe for my 74-year-old father doesn't drive due to cognitive impairment, visual difficulties, and think at times due to medication he isn't compos mentis enough to be driving. Safer for him and other drivers and pedestrians. Sometimes you have to make the big decisions, the hard choices for the better, not just to make someone happy. I'll be the bad guy, but at least people would be safe. I'm in the exact same situation with my dad, who's 72. He usually becomes very aggressive and offensive when me and my mother ask him about his driving fitness and eyesight, and when we let him drive he often tends to make minor to medium level mistakes. What? Absolutely. But I wouldn't even say apply it only to the elderly. Everybody should periodically have to redo the driving tests. I say about every 10 years. I'd even be cool doing it every 5 years for the first 10 years. Once at 16, once at 21, then at 31, 41, etc. The difference between when I was 16 and 21 was pretty significant. Plus, I think it would be good to have the occasional reminder for people to stop cruising along in the passing lane. Absolutely. Actually, I think it should be a requirement for everyone to pass a driving test every 5-10 years. Do you know how many people legitimately don't understand fundamental rules of the road because they either lucked out or simply forgot? The written exams are so ridiculously easy for many states. If anything, they should heighten the standards for everyone, not just the elderly, to get a license. So many bad drivers out there. I have seen so many accidents in cities that were so unavoidable, but there are too many people with unsafe habits on the road. While limited to just elderly people, everyone picks up bad habits. Road conditions and laws change all the time, and people forget stuff. Just make it so you get retested every 5-10 years. Job done. Safer roads, more income, and no accusations of age discrimination. When I took my road test and for 10 years following I never saw a roundabout. Now they're everywhere and most people my age or older have no idea what the laws involving roundabouts are. For your information, cars entering have a yield sign. The car in the circle has the right of way. A refresher once a decade wouldn't kill you. Quite the opposite. Yes. I don't even know how my grandma is still allowed to drive. I'm legitimately scared to drive with her. She's bound to cause an accident soon. In New Zealand you have to renew your license when you turn 75 and 80, and then every 2 years after that. You also have to bring a medical certificate to show a doctor thinks you're safe to drive. Yes. To avoid the age discrimination argument, I would be perfectly happy to get retested every 5 years if this meant that everyone had to. Yes. So much so. It's heartbreaking when an elderly person loses their license, but it's taken away because they were potentially dangerous to themselves or others. So many certifications licenses need to be renewed every 3-4 years. Why is the one in which lives are at stake good for 80+ years? Every single time I've been nearly rear-ended, cut off, nearly sideswiped, or any other near-miss auto accident, it's been someone who was not even remotely elderly. I think there should be retesting of driving tests on a 5 or 7 year basis for everyone who drives, because people get complacent. If we can limit when people can start driving, why can't we limit when people should stop driving? Deleted. Yes, because slowness can kill just as much as inexperience. It should be every year after a set age. I watched my grandparents go from able to drive to needing care within a short amount of time. Also, the elderly are high as kite on lots of drugs and will argue with you about it like it's cool. My DR gave me 14 different scripts and I can drive. Yay, right, if we were caught driving on the amount of dope olders are on, we would be arrested. I don't see the problem with everyone having to take annual competency tests. Sole reason why this doesn't get passed into law everywhere is because of the older folks still in office that drive like shit and don't want to lose votes and their licenses. I always hear people say that doing this is discriminatory, but I disagree. It isn't discrimination to make sure someone is physically capable of using something that can kill others. That said, I don't think it should just be elderly. Licenses should be renewed with a test every 5-7 years in my opinion. Age isn't the only thing that causes dangerous drivers. Laziness and arrogance does as well. Someone thinks they've been driving 4 years so they'll drive like an asshole. Some people forget basic traffic rules and cause accidents. Everyone should be retested for competence. Yes, if they can't operate the vehicle due to physical problems, they shouldn't be allowed to drive it. My grandma willingly gave up driving when her vision degraded. If she hadn't stopped herself, nobody would have unless she got into a possibly serious accident. It's similar to if I lose my glasses, I should not be allowed to drive.